Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Split Peak Soup. I'm your host, Neil Carney, and I'm here today with Ethan Estess. He is a marine artist and activist. Thanks so much for coming, Ethan.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're definitely happy to have tons of different voices on this podcast. This one's pretty cool because not only are you a marine scientist, but your art is inspired by the ocean, and it's actually doing some great stuff to educate the public about some issues that the ocean is facing. So hopefully we can get some good conversation out of this and give some people some good things to chew on.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I'm just used to reading your articles, so it's just cool to actually get to talk about stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this longer format with the podcast, it really opens up, a lot more deeper dives into all these subjects. And as a surfer, I'm somebody who cares deeply about our oceans, and I'm just stoked that there are people like yourself who are, putting it to task to really, educate and find out what we can do more to help protect this really vulnerable resource. Let's kind of start at the beginning. You grew up here in the area in Aptos, correct?
Yep.
And we're, as we all are, kind of children of the sea here in this location. What are your earliest memories about your connection with the ocean?
Good question. My dad grew up surfing as well. He moved here from Santa Monica, and so he grew up surfing Malibu and stuff, kind of golden days. So he really had a cool childhood, and then I think he wanted us to have a surf life as well. So he moved here when he was about 14 or 15 and finished up at Santa Cruz High, and fell in love with the waves and everything, Rivermouth and the lane. So he landed us here, and so I was lucky to grow up. He moved us to South County, and it's Corralitos area. Mm-hmm. So we would go to Beer Can Beach or Manresa, and my earliest memories were just getting worked in shore pound there, mm-hmm. and with the boogie board, and being this is powerful stuff. I remember that fear factor a little bit of just being whoa, I just got smashed by that wave. But then we just kept going, and I got past the fear factor of surfing and the ocean and just fell in, super into it. Started surfing full on maybe at 11 or 12 at Capitola jetty, first jetty, moved to second jetty. It's probably how 90% of people learn to surf.
For sure.
And on the east side especially. But just surfing with my dad was, unfortunately he doesn't surf anymore. So, but the memories of that, of just jumping in the van, going to the beach, getting cold, warming up with a dunk of warm water, just priceless.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my upbringing here for sure.
Cool. And I think that we're similar age, and I think during the 90s there's a lot more kind of knowledge about all of the ways in which we were harming the ocean, and more of a push to get kids interested in learning about this stuff in a practical way. When did your interest, as far as maybe it was your first exposure to themes about protecting the ocean? I think for me, I remember there's a lot of those recycle, reuse, reduce campaigns, and just stuff on whatever Sesame Street or whatever the hell it is. At what point did you become acutely aware of just how much danger this resource was?
I think about that a lot, because I'm dude, how did I even end up doing all this? And when did I really start thinking and even caring about the environment? And it kind of cuts two ways in Santa Cruz, because we have this really beautiful, super healthy ocean and ecosystem, and it can kind of lull you into a false sense of the ocean's healthy, it's like this everywhere, it's cool. And so I didn't really get that message really strongly until I was 17, and I went to Ecuador for a summer, just by myself, and traveled around and was just shocked. Like rubbish all over the beach, dead turtles all over the beach. Like I lived with a family on a beach in northern Ecuador, and every day there would be a new dead turtle washing up, and I was just like, "What's happening here?" You know.
Yeah.
And so the comparison of growing up in a national marine sanctuary where you don't see anything like that really, um, opened my eyes, and like that's what flipped the switch for me was leaving Santa Cruz and seeing how good we have it here and how the rest of the world basically has no infrastructure for dealing with waste, and very little fishing regulation. That's why the turtles were washing up dead from the local shrimp trawling. So
Yeah.
that popped the bubble for me. Makes me appreciate what we have here, but it's a bit of a trap to live here and not see anything else. So yeah, that's what got me on my path of caring about plastic pollution, particularly.
Yeah. Cool. And that's so basically, was that the decision that you decided to take that into furthering your education, or you were kind of maybe probably a little interested in science before that, as far as just like a practical interest?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's exactly right. I knew that I liked sharks. I knew that I was interested in great white sharks. I knew that I wanted to learn everything I could about them, and I knew that I wanted to go to college to do that. I didn't know until I traveled that there were all these other layers to the ocean. Like it had a lot of problems, and I'm like, it's one thing to study sharks because they're cool. It's another thing to like learn about the ocean because there's it's the only way to like figure out how to fix it, you know.
Yeah.
And that was a big flip of just no. At that point, it wasn't just about learning about sharks. I was trying to like gain tools and awareness to like try to help it, you know.
Yeah.
So
And how better to get to know something than to know what threatens it?
that's true. It's definitely a window. When you look at every different issue facing the ocean, whether it's overfishing, plastic pollution, ocean acidification, erosion, each of those issues is just a rabbit hole of understanding coastal systems, understanding the people and the communities that use these places, use these resources. Like that's why it's a cool thing to study. And I would, maybe not like the highest employment rate out of it, but if you wanted to just try to find a career, like a line of thinking, like or a line of learning that would like lead you to a lot of different things, the ocean's one of them because like it's so complicated and interconnected. You're gonna learn a lot.
Yeah.
The history of the way we've used the ocean from whaling and all this stuff. Like it's a cool field because you have to learn all of that. So I don't do that much of it anymore. I'm not working as a marine scientist right now, but I'm grateful for that background because it ties into the art and stuff that is what I'm doing mainly these days. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And so, sustainability is obviously something that is a big theme in your art. What do you think is there's certain cultures in the world where, their MO is to act today, now, so that, a generation, one or two generations down the line will be set up. But it feels like there's this kind of collective like amnesia or something that I don't know if it's a product of capitalism or just modern life, but most people are just forget thinking about a couple of generations down the line. They're thinking about what they can do in the next day or two to keep the lights on or whatever. And I mean, it might be something that we're kind of forced into, but in a sense, like, what do you think is the reason for that? That lack of preparedness for ensuring the survival of the things that we care about for our future.
yeah, that's a really really deep one, dude. I live in that kind of back and forth. I think obviously we all do. Like on one hand, I think my kids are the thing that really highlight this for me recently. Got a 2.5-year-old and a 10-month-old, and I would say it's like a little bit of tunnel vision where it's like, okay, like I'm just going living diaper to diaper, right? Like
Yeah.
this is insane.
Right.
And then on the other side, I'm like, but like there's being decisions being made at the city council, there's decisions being made at the state level and federal level that are actually going to like totally influence the world, and like not just the whole world, but like specifically maybe the oceanscape and like water quality and stuff, like where we swim and play, like down at the beach at Cows. So it's like really awkward as a parent because you like want to do everything, but you're also just like kind of in survival mode, which is basically, I think, in many ways where we all are. So keeping perspective, though, is, I think, the big one, because you can't do everything. You have to pick the issues that you know about and you care about, and like you can't just stretch yourself thin. So I try to talk about issues that relate to local sustainable fishing, plastic pollution. That's kind of my wheelhouse that I'm trying to stay in, because it's too easy to just like try to get involved with everything. There's no
Yeah.
time.
Right.
But then the other side of the perspective question about looking to the future and generation after generation is also looking back. And I think one of the books that really hits this is called the Life, Death, and Life of Monterey Bay by a guy named Steve Palumbi down in Monterey.
Yeah.
You interviewed him, right?
Brian did.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know that well. He was a professor at Stanford, and I never studied with him, but he wrote this book, and it basically talks about here in Monterey Bay, it used to be super gnarly. Like Cannery Row, there was Carmel by the Sea and like Monterey by the Smell. Like it was just sewage and fish guts. So like it was gnarly, and the bay was kind of pillaged, in terms of fishing effort.
Yeah.
And the point is, through basic like common sense regulation and like we can kind of create structural change that lasts generation after generation. Like that's my attitude. A lot of fishing folks are like, they hate rules, and I get that. There's so many rules in California, but the good ones matter, and they carry through generation after generation, so we can all enjoy a resource, right? So good regulation is epic if you care about the ocean. And bad regulation can make things worse, So that's kind of like my mentality now, is like try to help that process in any way I can, even just increasing awareness about policy changes and stuff. Then more people buy in or like get involved. Then hopefully you get to the best outcome. But yeah, I think that's the through line for me now, is like it doesn't exist without having a basic connection, like spearfishing or surfing and just being in the ocean. If you're just like not enjoying it, then you're not participating. You don't even know what's happening. But then on the other side, being politically active is important, because you're going to hopefully make it like make a lasting impact down the road. So
Yeah.
that's like long answer to your question,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's pretty deep, heavy question. I'm gonna have to think about that one for
That's
a while.
okay. Yeah. Well, then,
yeah.
I think just expanding on that in a different sense, right now we're living in some of the most politically polarized times ever. And, that may have been, the reasoning is manyfold, but now we know that there's this targeting algorithm that everyone's glued to their phones these days and social media, and there's actually like really like intelligent ways to people finding to hijack, steal, co-opt people's attention and influence them. So in these times where sometimes for especially myself included, a lot of the time it's like I almost want to disengage politically, because the rhetoric, and I see the the misappropriation of information being used to influence people. But then at the same time, when I feel like I'm disengaging politically, then all these things that you were talking about, these things that matter, these policies that are being voted on, and if we don't cast our vote or put our attention on these things, then the people who want to pass whatever they want to pass will have an easier time. So how do we navigate these troubled political times, in as far as the environmentalist stuff goes.
Dude, no, that's you're spot on with that. It's my reaction too is to try to disengage, because it's just like, it's like a little bit the negativity bias of like the news, right? It's just always bad, and that's true. There's also a lot of good things happening at the same time that we don't hear about, right? So, I think the only answer to that is something I heard from not Jimmy Panetta, his dad, Leon Panetta, at a fundraiser thing. I brought some art down for it, and it's for the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. And he gave a talk at it, and basically he was like, guys, like, Washington's broken. Like, if you care about the ocean and you want to see change, like, don't even bother over there. It's gonna have to happen at the local level. Like, any meaningful resistance or to change or proactive policy, like, it starts at home, and don't even waste your time in DC, right?
Yeah.
So that was like, coming from him, somebody who was really a Washington insider, hit me pretty hard, because I'm like, okay, like, you just have to pay attention to local issues, I guess. And at the same time, I am guilty of just like doom scrolling comments on social media stuff, and it's educational because it tells you some of the arguments, right, of like around a local issue, but also it's just so toxic that it doesn't actually motivate you to get involved. Usually you're like, okay, all these crazy people are yelling, I'm just gonna like stay out of this. And that to me is one of the biggest problems with social media. Is it makes you just want to get out of there, and disengage, like you said. Maybe one story that speaks to that locally is that like, real community and real coalitions still form in reality, not in social media, right? Kind of both. For example, there was a petition put forward by a kind of Berkeley-based environmental group to ban fishing off of like Pleasure Point and off of natural bridges, with the goal of protecting kelp forests from climate change's impacts, extreme heat, extreme warm water events and stuff. And it was just completely illogical, because in our local ecosystem, the sea urchins, which are abundant, are the problem for the kelp forests. They proliferate in warm water. They eat kelp, and they're the reason that up in Northern California, like, kelp forests have been basically destroyed, up to like 90% depletion. And we're lucky here because we have sea otters. They eat sea urchins, and without them, we probably wouldn't have a kelp forest off Pleasure Point. That's the situation. The fish that we target, halibut, white sea bass, I mean, really name any fish out here, hawkfish, they don't play a role in urchin population dynamics. So they don't eat urchin. So by increasing the abundance of local fish, that great, but it's not going to touch the urchin population. So it's a super misguided policy. The science, there's like, I can read off a bunch of different publications that speak to this. And nonetheless, this group proposed it to the Fish and Game Commission, and people freaked out, and in a good way, right? You had folks like Sean Dollar, like, being like, what's going on? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And a whole organization called All Waters got formed by Chris Killen and some other guys in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Being like, whoa, like, the fishing community is not organized enough to push back on a bad proposal like this. So let's fix that. And they did. They had a meeting with the Fish and Game Commissioner, who lives in Santa Cruz, and just started this dialogue of like, what is this proposal? What can we do? How can we engage to push back on it? And I went to that meeting, and it was like the coolest thing, because you had like 100 dudes who care about fishing in the room, and care about fishing, and like are surfers, and like care about the community, right? Hans Haveman, all these great folks, and they were basically just getting politically active in a way that had not happened really before. So as far as I know. And so All Waters was born out of this bad proposal, causing a reaction on social media and in person. And then, myself and others have been going to Fish and Game Commission meetings, trying to bring the science forward, bring a common sense kind of approach. And it's working. Like it's been very well received by the Fish and Game Commission because they're just used to fishermen yelling at them, like screaming, not
Right.
yelling, like
Yeah.
freaking out on them,
Yeah.
snapping. And All Waters has been like respectful and professional and science based, and like all of a sudden things are happening. Like bad ideas are getting pushed to the side, and that for me has been really inspiring. It's taken way too much time. Everybody's volunteering, and it's just messed up that citizens have to do that work when like a very well funded organization that should have done the basic research ahead of time, or honestly they just neglected it. They swept it under the rug thinking the fishermen weren't going to notice. And that to me is the way the world is right now. Is like well funded entities can just throw spaghetti at the wall, get things through, make things happen. And if people don't show up and talk in a rational way and resist in a rational way, usually the moneyed folks get away with it, right?
Yeah.
And the best quote from All Waters somebody mentioned was like, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu, And so if you don't show up, like, don't be snapping when you can't fish in your backyard. Don't be snapping when there's a high rise in your backyard. Like you have to go to the meetings.
Community action.
Yeah, there's no other way as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Can't think of any alternative. And it's messy and it sucks. Takes time, and it's not always fun. But you do make friends in the process. Like I've made some friends through the All Waters thing, and I think that's really cool.
And you might learn a little bit more about what the rationale or the reasoning for the other side, what they're putting out there, and maybe gleaning some kind of more kind of refined understanding of all the issues.
That's a good point. Sometimes it's not so cut and dry. Like this one, I feel really strongly that like I know that they cut these corners.
Right.
Like they basically admitted it. So, but in other issues, like you're gonna learn something from being in the room with somebody, and that's like they say like a good negotiation is where everybody's equally dissatisfied with the outcome, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that's changed in our country and culture is that like this concept of like everybody wants to be the right, like you see that on social media, everybody's just like on their soapbox, ready to be right and wanting that result. But that's not how it works, like democracy is basically like a long, painful negotiation process.
Yeah. And having the kind of the integrity to and the honesty with yourself, if you are presented with facts that might upset your worldview, to be like, you know what, they're kind of right there. And I think we all need to, in all subjects, politically and otherwise, to have a little bit of less rigidity around our perceived kind of stances.
Yeah, that's true, and it's easier said than done for sure. Like definitely. It's really. We're almost like conditioned to get these knee-jerk reactions against or for, and that's it's really like an ego check when you're like, wait, why am I so mad about this? Like it takes a bit of self-awareness maybe to like not take the rage bait, like the bait and stuff. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel it. I'm sure you do too. Just like the way everybody's on edge, and like I just think that. It's almost like everybody's taking the rage bait right now.
Yeah.
Like everybody's just mad about something, and just even like driving down the road, it's just a little more aggressive and stuff. Maybe I haven't been surfing much, probably true in the water, but I don't know. It's a weird time.
Yeah. And then, like, especially too, like, because these issues are wrapped up in politics and, most people, I mean, we do have more than two parties, but for all intents and purposes, not.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, he's a good friend of mine. He's a crab fisherman, and I'm not too up on all of the ins and outs of this, but the reason why they've been kind of halting the crab fishing has to do with protecting the whales and stuff like that. And because Gavin Newsom is the guy who's kind of, I don't know, signing off on this stuff, this friend who's a little bit more conservative, he's like, it's fucking Newsom, it's like whatever. And then he starts talking about like Pizzagate and all this type, and it just is like, dude, it can just veer off course so quickly, and
Yes.
people's their their biases can cloud judgment.
Yeah, it can cloud the validity of one argument. It can get lost in another, in just like the conspiratorial stuff, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's a good issue to talk about. I think a lot of people are kind of peripheral to it, and have some awareness, but like I don't have answers on it. I just have some overlap with with the whale stuff and the crab stuff, simply because I make art out of the old fishing rope, right?
Yeah.
So I have like thousands of pounds of crab line sitting in my garage, and that's one of the supply chains basically for my work, is taking old material, because crabbers will like stop trusting their gear after a certain amount of time, and there's no recycling for it locally, so it gets landfilled. So I would just go to the docks and leave my business card up in Half Moon Bay and here, and just made friends and stuff with fishermen, and I get a ton of gear from them when they're going to go dump it. So for what it's worth, like it's not like solving any problems. But it's, as an artist, like I try to just keep my eyes open to material, and it turns out that fishing rope is just one of the most abundant and often free. Like I always offer to pay, but nobody ever accepts. Basically, I definitely bring beers and try to keep people stoked.
Yeah.
But like it's just garbage. It is. It's just
Right.
waste. It's true
Sure.
waste. It shouldn't be, but it is. And so that's one supply chain for my rope for the art, and then the other is I do I work in the Hawaiian Islands with different nonprofits. One's called Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii. The other one's called the Center for Marine Debris Research. And you can think of the Hawaiian Islands as basically just like a net or like a fence sticking out in the middle of the North Pacific Gyre, this big, giant, massive, swirling current. And things start to aggregate in the middle. Floating objects will just kind of pile up and sort themselves into the middle of the Pacific, and then that moves seasonally, and the Hawaiian Islands are just sticking out like a little fence with plastic bags blown into it, right? And so seasonally, like just hundreds of thousands of pounds of fishing rope and buoys and nets will wash up on the beach there, and these hardcore local groups do the most difficult thing in the world, which is drag it off the beach, and like it's off of coral reefs and off of remote beaches. These things are huge, sometimes just like 50, 100 feet long. And it's almost all waste from the commercial tuna fisheries, the purse seine fisheries operating in the Western Pacific, mostly Asian countries that are essentially intentionally losing gear. I can go into more detail on that, but that's the other supply chain for my rope. Is I work with these nonprofits, I donate, and they give me the rope, because in Hawaii, all the plastic, all the waste is burned. There's no shipping to the mainlands, right? It's all incinerated. And so I scoop it up when they're done doing their science and analysis of the different plastics, and then they're like, yeah, take it, and I'll put money into their orgs that way. That's just like, it's Hawaii. You have to be courteous. If you're not courteous in Hawaii, you're not going to work there, right?
Right.
So it's not about the money, but it's about like showing respect because they did the hard part. So I make art out of those different types of materials.
Yeah.
Locally, the crab fishing thing has become a real hot button issue. We have a huge growing population of humpback whales. All marine mammals are federally protected. You're not allowed to you're not allowed to get close to them. You're not allowed to hurt them or anything. Can't touch them. And that regulation worked in some ways. Like we now have a massive population of humpback whales. With one caveat, we have a local population of humpbacks, and then we have like a migratory population of humpbacks that's not doing as well. And so in the mix, and so that's where things are weird. On one hand, you've got like essentially like too many, I'm not gonna say too many humpbacks, but you got a ton.
The numbers are looking good.
Really good. But then on this other little subpopulation, it's not looking so good.
Right.
So if you're the federal government and your job is to protect all marine mammals, you kind of just have to have this draconian, like, nope, any entanglement, any whale death, we're just going to look at it all the same, and it's just not allowed. And so if your fishery is like impacting whales, sorry, you know, and
Yeah.
it's really, it's militant, right? And that is kind of like shows how far we've come in terms of like the way people have changed their perspectives on whales. I mean, we used to like slaughter them by the thousands and
Right.
use their blubber and their oil to light our homes, and they were just meat, you know, for the for society in a way. And you know, now like you can't even touch them, right?
Right.
So there's this really weird kind of culture shift that is driving that. What fishermen feel, people care more about the whales than they care about fishermen, that they're ruining somebody's livelihoods, but hey, high five, we saved one of the 10,000 or, you know, like abundant humpback whales in the bay. And like it's an untenable problem. The solution that's being pushed, which is complicated, is the idea of pop-up gear. So it's a using a acoustic signal to release a float. So there's no vertical line just like so hanging in the water column for like days on end, because that's what happens. There's a surface float, a line, and a trap, and the whales will just swim right through that. They can't see it,
Yeah.
and they get stuck in their mouth. They get it wrapped around their tail. That's the problem. But the pop-up gear has that float attached to the trap, and then if you send an acoustic signal, boom, the float's supposed to come up, and then you haul it up like normal.
Okay.
In theory, you solve the problem. But anybody who's worked in marine science or fished knows that electronics in saltwater like are not friends. So
Right.
the failure rate is a big problem on this. That it's not perfected, and it probably never will be. Which means you're maybe creating more ocean pollution, not more, but
Some.
you're not totally eliminating the entanglement risk. You're potentially contributing to ghost fishing, which is where traps that are lost continue to catch crab and other animals and, you know, kill them with nobody harvesting that.
Right.
So, and there's other issues like you can't see into the water. You don't know if somebody else laid their trap on the bottom because there's no surface float. You can't see it. So you could drop a trap right on somebody else's, then they get tangled up underwater or something.
Yeah.
It can be a nightmare, you know, it's also expensive. That's like the biggest thing really. That I think that might be the nugget of like what could make this like a solvable issue. If the federal government wants fishermen to not be impacting whales and they want them to move to this new gear, I think they should just pay for it, right? Like we can afford that that transition. And yeah, there's these other issues, but at the end of the day, if you can keep people fishing, bringing, you know, seafood from our local sustainable sources as opposed to importing it, which is what we do for 90% of our seafood.
Yeah.
I'd rather play that imperfect game locally than just get it from an foreign fishery that has no regulation at all.
Right.
And that, I think people are trying to make it like a perfect situation. It's never going to be clean. It's never you're going to lose traps. But I think as long as it's paid for by the government or subsidized heavily, then it's probably the best solution we can come up with, because fishermen can still fish. Whales won't get, you know, tangled up as much. We can't really do better.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell. So, you know, people have real strong views on it, and they should, because it's like their livelihoods, you know. But I'm in a weird spot on it because I see the rope coming, and like when they change regulation, then there's a bunch of rope of this type that gets all thrown out because fishermen aren't allowed to use it, and like there's just, you know, it's just a gnarly problem that doesn't have a clean solution, and that's what we're dealing with. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems really, really tricky. So for you, you know, you're gathering this used rope, and you know, you're using it for small scale art pieces, and you're also using it for some large scale art installations. Just kind of walk me through your process. I know that you have the rope, and you kind of create these really cool little wave kind of, I don't know, what would you call it, like a tableau or like some kind of you know, image using the rope, and then all the way to, you know, like one of your giant barreling waves where you use ropes where somebody can actually stand in it. Can you just kind of walk me through your process? Because I do know that a lot of the times the colors of the rope that helps inform the piece that you have. And is there anything like difficult about finding certain colors, or just the application process, or do you have to do anything to kind of process the material that you use?
Yeah. Super good question. I mean, that's I basically try to make like seascapes with old fishing rope, right? So wave scenes or kind of Japanese kind of flowing wave patterns. That's where I got the idea for it. Was I was working in Japan in like kind of basically for about 2 months of summer for about 5 years. And for the Monterey Bay Aquarium, they would send me out there to work with some Japanese government researchers who were tagging bluefin tunas. And because bluefin tunas migrate from Japan all the way to California, grow up here, and swim back.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to kind of understand the full life cycle by using electronic trackers. So anyway, we're over there. I'm in fishing villages, middle of nowhere, like super remote. So like nobody speaks English. So I had like a couple people I could talk to, but like mostly just like walked around on the beach and like looked at trash and like cruised around the harbors, looked at rope and all this, you know, that was how I killed time. And I go to temples, and the idea for the rope panels kind of came to me when I saw this carving in a temple that was like a beam, and it had like a water, like linear water carving on it. I'm like, oh, like that could be like, I could probably make a pattern like that out of like some of the rope. And so that was like 2016, and I just ran with it when I got home back to my studio here and started making them. And it was cool because like it helped me launch my like career, because I hadn't been really making any money basically making like Japanese style prints, like Yotaku fish prints and stuff. They just weren't like selling. So the rope stuff all of a sudden turned into like a thing, and I was like, oh geez. So I started collecting rope and doing different patterns. So that's how it started, and I'm still doing it. Like I'm sometimes like, you know, feel like I should be, I'm trying to branch out and do other things too, but like it's kind of like my bread and butter, right? So I got to like pay the rent on the studio, and so I just kind of keep making these things, and I still enjoy it, but like the bigger ones, like the bigger panels for me are more fun. Like we did ones for this a brand called Outerknown, which is Kelly Slater's thing, where they built out 5 stores across the country a couple years ago, and they wanted giant rope panels in them. And so I got like thousands of pounds of reclaimed lobster rope, and some of these things were like 23 feet wide and 7 feet tall, like a
Damn.
whole wall of rope, like in a wave pattern. And I was like, this is still fun for me. Like this is different enough. This is a sick challenge and a cool store that's all like sustainable clothing basically. So I'm still doing it. It's been, I don't know how many years, like maybe almost 10 years, really pushing on the art stuff, and still fun,
Yeah.
and still challenging to get organized enough to make a living off of it, and still trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And so yeah, talking about how did that relationship with Outerknown start for you?
I think about that. It was like I had met Kelly a couple of times through the bigger wave sculptures, like the barreling. I did one that was all fishing rope. It was a big barrel at pipe, and he like took pictures and was really cool, and met him that time. And then I made one out of golf balls that were all collected out of the ocean. We used like 20,000 golf balls to make like a big peaking, like sand sucking A-frame.
Yeah.
And put it on a trailer. And I say sand sucking because some of the golf balls were like tan brown,
Oh,
because they
cool.
roll on the seafloor and they start losing all the layers of sketchy plastic.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are just shiny and white. So I tried to make it look like it was dredging up the sand. And I asked him, I just reached out on Instagram. I was like, hey, like I'm making this sculpture. I know you golf. Like, could I bring it to the surf ranch for the contest in September? There's like the freshwater pro,
Yeah.
you know, and he's like, cool. Yeah. Like, who do I need to talk to? Like, I'm like, I don't know. I think you just saying yes is good enough.
Yeah.
So the
Cool.
surf league, said I could bring it to the event, and, drove it down there, and, people can interact with it. So I met him a couple times, but I never really hung out with him. But I met his business partner through that, and they kind of just, I guess, remembered the work and reached out when they were designing the stores. And that, this guy's name is John Moore. He's super rad. So that's how it happened. Just very, just kind of peripheral. But, I think for any artist, that's kind of the game. Like, you just kind of, unfortunately, kind of say yes to everything in the beginning. And sometimes you meet cool people and things happen like that. And, you know, I don't know. It's not really intentional. It just, if you just keep putting it out there, sometimes it'll click and you'll get a crazy project, you know?
Yeah.
So, that was a lucky one. That was a lucky one.
And have they been, correct me if I'm wrong, but I also kind of remember seeing something that they're incorporating your art into some of the clothing. Or was that
No, it was
maybe
my
on?
friend's brand. Like this hat, it's, the bill is all made of fishing nets inside
Okay.
of the fabric part.
Yeah.
That's my friend's company. It's called Borreo. They, collect nylon fishing nets, mostly in Chile, but kind of all over now. And these are huge nets. They're for purse seining, so you wrap an entire school of mackerel or tuna. Like these things, you could wrap a jumbo jet with these nets. They're super big, and they're all 100% pure nylon. And then they get so many holes in them, they can't fix them anymore or whatever, and so they toss them. And so my friends, which is like three surf dudes, they were just like, let's figure something out. Turns out the nylon's just perfectly good still. If you grind it up and repelletize it, you can injection mold it into basically anything. So they kind of first launched with a skate board collaboration with Carver. So they're making nylon skate decks, and then they got in with Costa. They started making these sunglasses. They started
great.
doing all these high-end like collabs, and they turned it into actual like a real business. So they, like, most Patagonia jackets are made out of their material now, like 90%, maybe more. So they took a like a true waste, and they found a new home for it, and that's like, the term would be upcycling, where you're adding value to a material as it goes through a supply chain, versus most recycling is downcycling. You take a plastic bottle, you turn it into like a carpet or like something low value, like
Yeah.
rarely becomes a plastic bottle again.
Right.
So there's downcycling, recycling, and upcycling. And what Borreo does for like the Outerknown new board shorts is just taking fishing nets and, integrating that into the weave. So, it's pretty cool. It's like, I'm stoked for them because they just kind of like winged it and turned it into a real business,
Yeah.
operating all over the world at this point.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they're still just surfing buddies in Oxnard now.
Cool.
So I'm stoked for them.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and you know, this is kind of a loaded question, but it's also something that I think is useful to explore. Someone like Kelly Slater is in kind of a tough position because, you know, he's obviously interested in the health of the ocean and the world, and he's incorporating some of that messaging into a lot of his product, the sunscreen and the clothing and stuff like that. But then on the flip side, he's also involved in, you know, these kind of like, you know, arguably environmentally kind of harming operations like the wave pool, or how much time he spends on a jet and stuff like that.
Sure.
And he probably gets a rash of shit for this on Instagram and stuff like that. But how do you walk that line for being, you know, standing by something, but then, you know, you have to make some small concessions in your life to maybe be involved in, I mean, it's inescapable.
Yeah.
We're kind of just stuck in this system where it's all around us.
Yeah,
But
I think it's like amplified for people like that because their decisions are so visible, and and they're profiting, right? And so like but that's like how we all are. Like I talk about this a lot with the plastic pollution stuff, where, you know, the goal is not perfection. The goal is basically just improvement. Like we only recycle maybe 10% of plastics at all. Like, so everything you're putting in the blue can, like a lot of people feel and have a justified argument that most recycling is kind of a waste of time. So like, I bring that up as kind of a microcosm of like, we all are kind of stuck in the games that you know, we're stuck in the systems that exist. Like if we had better recycling infrastructure, then it would make sense to be designing fully recyclable products and stuff. Maybe the better example, it would be like compostability. Like I had this problem I had an art opening recently, and the awesome gallerists were like, "Oh, it's cool, we got compostable cups," and I'm like, well, which ones? Because like there's PLA, polylactic acid, which is like acetate, which is like the clear compostable cups, and you see it in like all the restaurants in town. But we don't have industrial scale composting. Like only certain cities in the world have that.
Yeah.
You know, like San Francisco, and even then, it's not great data on like that stuff doesn't entirely break up. Or the question is, what does it break up into? It's often just essentially microplastic, right?
Yeah.
Unless it hits the high enough temperature to actually compost.
Right.
So that's like an example of how we're all kind of stuck. Like we think we're doing the right thing, but it's like if the systems aren't there to make it make sense, then it's not. Like it doesn't help anything. It's just still plastic at that point, right? So kind of a long-winded answer, but I think I got to like hang out with Kelly at like a dinner, and it was really interesting because I didn't know what to expect. I'd met him a couple times, but didn't really like talk, and we just talked story for like 4 hours. And the first hour was just we talked about sharks the entire time because he had said something years ago about. He's like, oh, I got so much shit for this. I like said something about it's time to start culling sharks in Reunion Island because he had a friend and he knew some people.
I
who had been
remember
eaten,
that.
right?
Yeah.
And he got so much shit from the environmental community, even though he kind of had like probably way more knowledge of it than they did because he spent so much time surfing there.
Yeah.
And anyway, we just went on shark stuff for a whole, like full hour. We were talking about boards, and he was just hyper knowledgeable. And then he stood up and he gave his talk about Outerknown. And it made me kind of like, I didn't know. Part of me felt like maybe it was just kind of like a business venture that like he wasn't involved in. But the way he talked about it was, it really is his baby. Because when he was writing for Quicksilver and stuff, like he went and did a tour of like their factories, and he's just like sweatshops, you know, like this is, I want nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
So for him, it almost seemed like Outerknown was more about people and like not wanting, like having like fair trade stuff. And then the environmental stuff kind of was maybe an add-on.
Yeah.
But that kind of made me respect his approach more because you could tell that was like really what he wanted out of it.
Yeah.
Was just like not having having blood on his hands from sweatshops, right?
Yeah.
So I think of it as a pretty committed. It's one of the most committed companies that I've worked with in the sense that like they like won't take good opportunities to like collaborate with another brand or something if this other brand isn't like really walking the talk, or
right.
like if this material they want to use is like good but not like good enough. Like they have like crazy standards, so that's why it's expensive and people talk a lot of smack about it, but like I feel like I don't really know any other brands that are trying that hard.
Yeah.
You know, like
sure.
It's as a surfer, like I think we get marketed to a lot with like, oh, this is sustainable board shorts. It has plastic bottles in it. Or like, there's a ton of that. And more time goes by, I'm like getting a little bit, starting to see some of it as like, not disingenuous, but like, they're just doing enough to like make you feel okay about buying it.
Right.
But I think long run, we need like companies that really are leaning into it and like have it as like a moral obligation. That's more the path forward, you know? And I don't mean to be rude but like some of these companies are trying, but they're like, maybe they're not trying hard enough. It's been like 15 years that they like, since this has been popular, right? And they're still just kind of doing like the bare minimum sometimes.
Yeah. Just to get those social brownie points.
Check the box and make them feel good. But then they ship it in a plastic bag or like, you know, like, so I feel like it's not like a systems approach to it. Whereas, Outerknown for sure has like an entire like systems approach. Like, and that's when it comes to fish or clothing. That's how I try to think about the world now. It's just through like supply chain analysis, right? Like, where's it come from? Whose job is it to harvest the fish? Whose job is it to spin the yarn? And then just go from there. How's it getting transported? What's it transported in? It's like mind numbing and like to go down that rabbit hole. But like that's what sustainability looks like. It's just life cycle analysis. What happens to it when it gets thrown out? Like,
Yeah.
that's the unsexy side of what sustainability for products is like. And
Yeah.
we have a company in Santa Cruz called Supply Shift. They are sick. They're down on Front Street. That's their whole job. They do supply chain analysis and sustainability analysis for big companies. They let me come to one of their conferences because I brought some art, and they had like this dude from like General Mills, like the cereal company, and like Unilever, like the biggest, like some of the biggest brands in the world. And that's how these big brands are starting to approach their problems. Like, say, okay, like, because they see it as a liability. If you order paper from this source and it turns out it's from like a old growth forest in Canada, like people are going to freak out,
Right.
So that's the transparency is improving into some of these bigger companies, and that gives me some optimism.
Yeah.
It's like if those companies do anything better, it can make a really big difference because they're huge.
Yeah, I think that just talking about all this reminds me of like certain sunscreens where you look on it and it says reef safer with a asterisk on there. And I think some sunscreen companies just kind of got into some hot water based, I think Sunbum or something, like based around their claims or their, just how like bad the sunscreen was for the reefs and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and just from I was thinking about this the other day. I've got so many like I wear my wetsuits basically till they like fall apart completely. I mean, some people can buy one, wear it for winter, and then sell it at one of the places like Blown Out up here.
Yeah.
But then and then also surfboards. Like I broke a surfboard the other day, and I was just kind of thinking about it. I'm like, dude, where the fuck do I put this? Like
it's tough.
And like maybe I didn't research hard and long enough, but I just threw it in my trash can, and then with my wetsuits, those go to the dump. And I think that there are certain wetsuit companies that have been, I think O'Neill's involved in, I talked to John Hunter, and that's kind of a focus. I don't know how, like, you said walk the talk about how palpable this all is, but they are doing things to recycle wetsuits. But I don't know any place like the wetsuit recycling bin where you can go put that in. Like what do you think needs to happen with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a good issue to talk about. It's one of those where there's like it's pretty confusing, and I'm not super up on it, but I have a couple thoughts. I just looked it up. Apparently, Rip Curl stores will accept your old suits, and I have a couple. I don't know what they do with them. There's another group. This guy called like Lava Rubber. You can box them up and ship them to him. But I didn't want to pay, so I just take them to the Rip Curl, and I'm not exactly sure what their end of life solution is. Usually with neoprene, it gets ground up and recompressed into like a mat or something. That's what the guy Lava Rubber does. He makes
like yoga mats
out.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody actually fully recycling a wetsuit back into a wetsuit. I don't think that exists.
Yeah.
I did a beach cleanup, and I was talking to Sarah Gerhardt, who's amazing, and professor of chemistry at UCSC. She's super sharp, and she was interviewed in a movie she told me to watch. I can't remember the name, and she's talking about like Ulex and the newer neoprene technologies.
Yeah.
And apparently it's come a long way, and it's kind of like they're solving a lot of the core problems. I don't know about recyclability, but in terms of like what virgin materials are being used, I think they're cracking the code on that. So it's worth looking up what what documentary she was in.
Yeah.
I think it's just coming out.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's a hot one because like that's when you look at the products that surfers use. Yeah, you got your wetsuit, your board. Boards are almost impossible to recycle. Foam products are hard to recycle, and fiberglass, right? Fiberglass and resin. That I've seen a bit of stuff recently with, you can glass anything. You can glass toilet paper, and make it a sustainable surfboard. But if at the end of the day, sure, okay, if you can strip the glass off of it and then recycle the core, that's cool. But like a lot of people, we're stuck with fiberglass, right? We're stuck with fiberglass and epoxy, and there's bioepoxy, but it's still plastic. So it's like if you really want to nerd out and go down the rabbit hole, like you got to figure out how to make a glassless board. And there's this one dude, his Instagram is 9lights. Oh, man, he makes the most beautiful surfboards, and they're wooden and they're shellacked and like cork, and they're so freaking beautiful, and they look like they work, and there's no glass. It's just essentially oiled wood.
Wow.
And I love his stuff. There's not many people who are actually doing that, like glassless full eco board,
Yeah.
But again, it's not necessarily about perfection. And there's the whole Sustain Surf organization, the Eco Board Project. They rank boards based on their sustainability, different criteria. That's the best approach I could think of, just to try to nudge the industry. And sometimes
taking
baby steps, and then but that doesn't also capture it, because like I laugh because like Neff at Homegrown Surfboards, he's like, fuck eco boards, like I don't lose a drop of resin when I glass a board, like I don't lose a single drop. And he's right, like that's one form, one definition of sustainability.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, controversial take, you got something like Firewire, and they have these massive factories, but then they're like reusing all the dust and they're making pavers out of it, maybe, like they are at scale, and they can do things that are sustainable at that scale too. So like on one end you got little guy, and David and Goliath kind of thing, but it's almost like that's the way of the world, right? Like we kind of have to make the change that we can in our own space. Like we can't, boards are tough. I don't have any good answers. I grew up making boards, and I hate it at the same time, because I'll probably die young because of the way I made surfboards as a kid. Like no respirator, and like not thinking about a dust mask. Like that's just what it is. It's a terrible industry. Yeah, and we're stuck with it. And I have we all have a love-hate relationship with that. The glassers and sanders are in. They're at the short end of the stick on that, and I don't know. I think, I don't know. I think the upstream materials have improved. Like you could go buy a grow blanks, like agave blank, right now. They ship them from Kenya. You can honestly just make one here. You take agave, you cut it, you glue them up, and you can make like a solid wood board that really works, especially like bigger like gun with a little bit of mass. If you really want to go down that route, you still have to glass it. But if you really want to go down that rabbit hole, there's so much room for tweaking and flax and basalt and all this stuff that some of it's gimmicky, some of it is actually like maybe the future, So I think it's a fun space to explore. At least,
Well, I think another thing that makes that kind of complicated is that the cost of those boards is like just exponential, and it might not be accessible to your average Joe, but maybe at some point that if they refine the process, or who knows what advancements that would need to happen for that to be more. And then you also have to just get the seal of approval from people who surf really good, that these things work really good, and that's why it's cool. Tyler Fox has been working with some sustainable surfboards, and if you want to kind of if you want to show the world that your board can work good, having that guy rip the hell out of it is is a great
Proves the point. Yeah.
yeah. But I guess on the same token, it's like, and maybe he's just that supernaturally talented that he can make it look good, so it's difficult
It's a
for the
funny
consumer.
one. One of the cool projects over the years, my friend Cliff Capono, who's a pro surfer and a chemist, like super savvy on the material stuff, right? He and my friend Kahi Picaro, they set up a contest on the North Shore at Pipe where it was called the Pro Test, and they had X amount of shapers, glassers, and surfers all get in and like try who could get the best wave on an eco board, basically.
Oh, cool.
And so it was it's pushing that envelope,
Yeah.
right? Like the heaviest wave and just pure performance,
Right.
And so the materials are there. There's no question. It really is about margins. Like it's just, surfboard shaping margins on making boards are so small that like
Yeah.
you change your production, like all of a sudden you're losing money on these expensive resins, and it's a problem, like that's where so many things with sustainability end up. Like the technology, the answers are there, but are people willing to pay more for something that's done in a socially, environmentally responsible way? That's the core question.
Yeah.
Like we expect a surfboard to be 700, 750 bucks or whatever. And like to do it right is 1,100 to 1,200 bucks. Like nobody's going to buy it.
Yeah.
Or maybe like some dude will buy it,
Right.
like not the mainstream won't buy it.
Yeah.
And that is really the gulf of sustainability. It's really hard. That what I've noticed is a lot of sustainable products will end up having to start as a luxury brand, and then maybe they get adopted widely, and then they can scale, and then the price point comes down.
Yeah.
And that just almost never happens. But you can't. I don't know how else to bridge it. Maybe that's where the government should be stepping in, and this is like core environmental economic stuff. They call that like net social good. Like the true cost of a product, oil, for example, is perceived as cheap, when in reality, the actual social cost, the pollution to the air, effects on climate, whatever, that's what it costs. Like what we have to pay to clean up from oil, right? When it spills, that's hitting in the cost. And that's the unaccounted for cost of what you pay for something versus what it does to the world is what they call the externality, the difference. And everything we buy, basically, we're stuck with what's the externality of that product. And very rarely does a product actually internalize all those costs, and you're paying what it's really worth, and you're paying for the damage it does, right? And that's unfortunately a really hard thing to bridge, but sometimes government subsidy, bringing the cost of a product down and of an expensive but good material down can be one way to do that. But yeah, that's the gulf of sustainability. How do we get it adopted into the mainstream and just change the narrative, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
But surfers are at least generally aware of that. And that's why it's like maybe feels like a niche issue, but it is a microcosm of the broader challenge of more sustainable materials. Here's one example. It's kind of optimistic. Is Cruise Foam in Santa Cruz?
Yeah. Oh, they're making big moves.
Yeah, sometimes it just makes more sense to do it the right way. Like styrofoam is the worst. It's like you can't control the stuff. It's like kryptonite.
Yeah.
Like it just blows out of your can. It blows. It's in the ocean like crazy. We've all seen it. Making a fully biodegradable styrofoam replacement, like not just like lip service biodegradable, but like it actually dissolves into basic carbon, like that's biodegradability. No microplastics and BS, like, so that's a good local, they happen to be local, but that's something that, if it gets adopted at a big scale, it's going to radically shift the way, like, it's just going to help solve the problem. Directly,
Yeah.
and the question again is cost, because plastic bags, styrofoam, these things are so cheap because they're byproducts essentially of fossil fuel extraction. When you're pumping natural gas, it's just as easy to take those those compounds and shoot them off into a refinery and make plastic out of it. So that's why we have partly so much plastic in our society, is that we have so much fossil fuel production, and it's just so cheap and easy to make plastic when you already have this stuff coming out of the ground. Like crazy. So we're kind of like, that's why we're stuck, is that the system is dependent on fossil fuels, and the plastic is just the cheapest, easiest thing to do with it. It's energy efficient to make a plastic bag, but that doesn't account for everything else. Everybody, it breaking up into microplastics, having to go pick it up, having to choke out turtles, So that's the rub, is that we're stuck in this pretty messed up system. And starting at the local level, maybe if I've seen more and more local businesses use Cruise Foam's products, like Alibi Interiors, Chris, Paige are doing it. Like, I've seen other local brands start to use their packing materials. I should probably start using their packing materials. Maybe that's where it starts.
And what's interesting too about the plastic as a byproduct of fossil fuel extraction, it's like, what a layered kind of evil that's happening, because we're raping the earth of this limited resource, the fossil fuels. We also have this, not unlimited, but huge supply of a resource that can be used to create something that, helps people's lives. But in the end of the day, that's also harming the environment too. So it's like a domino effect with stuff like that.
Totally. And I feel strongly like a lot of people are kind of naive when it comes to plastic. Like, oh, we need plastic. Like, you go to the hospital and it's saving lives, right? Every day. And, I'm not trying to ever say we don't need plastic, because we obviously do for a lot of things. But I think a lot about like the really stupid use cases, where like a bag is a good example. You use something for 15 minutes that lasts like 500 years,
Right.
Like, that's just dumb. It doesn't need to be that material,
right.
Or I think of like airplanes, like the cups, like I use that for 2 minutes. I slam my Coca-Cola and I'm done, and it's gone. It's going to sit in the landfill forever, Like, I just think there's so many stupid use cases that if we could like trim those down, it's particularly in the single-use plastics, that actually might make a difference.
Right.
So there's a couple companies worth mentioning. Obviously, Cruise Foams on the styrofoam replacement. Mango Materials is doing. I talked about how compostable bioplastics usually are kind of like lame, because they only are industrially compostable, not like backyard compostable. Mango Materials is one that's making a fully backyard compostable cup. And then Sway, they're making algae-based films, because like when you recycle a film in your blue bin, it almost never gets recycled. What happens to it is it gets shipped to Indonesia, to some little village in the middle of nowhere, and kids are burning it, and living it around it, and they're making tofu. Have you seen the film The Story of Plastic?
No, but I think I watched the trailer for it recently, just a few days ago, actually.
Super strong movie. I would recommend that to anybody who's trying to kind of go a little deeper on the plastic pollution stuff. And my friends filmed that, and he came back with like the worst sinus infection ever, because of the air quality. This village, literally every home has a pile of film plastics, like just the flexible stuff.
Right.
And we don't recycle it here, partly because it's just a pain. It gets stuck in the machinery, and it's all different types. And so we just bin it and ship it and bale it, and ship it to Indonesia or to Vietnam. And it burns because it's thin and easy, and it's plastic. And it creates heat, which is enough heat to boil water, which they're making tofu out of. And that's their livelihood in that village.
Right.
But talk about Cancer Alley, like my buddy just being there for shooting the thing for 2 days was like wrecked for like 3 weeks with the sinus infection. It's like, it's killing people at every stage of production and end of life. Like, this is terrible material. And we're stoked putting it in the blue bin, but it's not going into water bottle.
No, definitely not.
It's getting burned in Asia.
Yeah.
So that's the sad part. And that's why, again, the systems thinking, systems approaches to sustainability are the only things that make sense. Because if you just think you put it in the blue bin and it's done, that you're not looking at the whole picture, right? So that movie is called The Story of Plastic by Steve Wilson. Super sick storyteller, journalist type, and yeah, heavy hitter. But trying to think of anything else that. Like the positive side is that those films can be replaced by a company like Sway doing an fully biodegradable algae-based product that it may not have the shelf life of a plastic film.
Right.
It may be good for certain things, but even if you can just make a dent on like stupid packaging,
Yeah.
most of the plastic that's getting polluted in the ocean is packaging.
Yeah.
You got commercial fishing gear on one side, which adds up, looks like a lot in part because it's heavy. When you do these studies, you weigh the plastic, and it's durable. So like all the films, they just break up. And so if you go out to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and you did a survey and weighed everything, you're gonna say, oh, half of this is fishing gear.
Yeah.
But the reality is everything else is just dissolved, or not dissolved, but it's broken up into microplastics and made a soup out of the Pacific Ocean. So that's why it's like a biased data set in a way that makes fishing look even worse in certain ways than it is. When really most of the packaging just breaks up in sunlight.
Right.
Photo degrades into smaller and smaller pieces of plastic, still plastic.
Right. Yeah.
That's the way it's going down as we speak. That's where we are. So if we can cut off and improve the single-use plastic stuff, that will in the long run. I mean, we just have to do that. You know,
Yeah.
Like, it's just dumb. We're just being dumb.
Yeah. At some point, you know, like, you know, we have the kind of the luxury of being kind of, downstream from all these, you know, watershed moments that are going to happen a lot. This can't be sustained. These things will have to happen. So like you said, you know, like even if a company isn't, you know, doing everything that they can by taking those little measures to, you know, at least introduce this kind of method or this way of kind of, you know, combating the problems that are present because of our practices.
Yeah.
That's going to be a good thing.
I think so. I don't know any other way. I mean, it's easy to get critical of companies that aren't like being perfect, but like maybe it is virtue signaling. But if they weren't even doing that, then we're host, right? So like at least it's like kind of like a vote with your dollar concept. Like if you can tell a company's trying, maybe they're not all the way there, but they have one of their 10 products is like actually legit and sustainably, you know, and responsibly made, you know, you can support that. And then they'll see, hey, we sold way more of these things than the toxic ones, you know, so let's bolster production of that and let's do more of that. And then maybe in 10 years, that's all they do. So I don't know. That's like a theory of change when it comes to plastic pollution and materials. It's just, you kind of have to support to the best of your ability if you can afford it, you know, to do things the right way.
Yeah.
And I don't for a second harm people, or like I don't like throw shade on people who can't afford to pay for the most sustainable thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like neo-colonialism basically, of like being like, oh, all these people should be doing it this way because I'm high and mighty and I think right. And like that's only counterproductive, right?
Definitely.
It's kind of like we just have to slowly foster these things as best we can.
Yeah.
And not I mean the virtue signaling piece is like, it's a bad way of saying it, but it also is the way that culture works. People go out and spend, you know, however much on tennis shoes because they think it's a cool because of the sticker on the side, right? That's just the way humans are wired, really, or at least the way our culture has evolved at this point. And especially in American culture, it's very brand driven and materialistic, right? So we're stuck with that. We're not going to change that. And so in a way, we kind of have to just try to support companies that are aligned with our values. Like that's, I don't know any other way out of that system.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think just to pivot here a little bit, you know, there's obviously, I went to your art show at the Minnow Arts.
Sick.
The ropes, rubber, and rudders.
Yeah.
That was really cool. It had your art. It had Steiny's stuff,
Yeah.
and also a legend, Mark Cunningham, one of the arguably one of like the best body surfers in the world. Kelly Slater says he's the best surfer, or Mike Stewart, or
Yeah.
those guys are pretty. You know, first of all, just explain, working with guys like that. And then also, who are other people who you are really jazzed about and what they're doing in their art to, push this issue into the public domain?
For sure. I'm so stoked on that show because it was just kind of a dream come true. Like I had, I guess I met Mark through a small gallery that we both have shown in San Francisco called the Great Highway. It's like tiny. It's real small, but the gallerist is a bodyboarder and he just loves ocean folk. And so he's kind of curated a small a community of folks who ocean people and make art, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Mark, in his retirement from lifeguarding on the North Shore, has become a prolific artist. You walk through his place and he's very organized. He's got bins of everything you can name, like bins of key cards from hotel rooms and bins of watches from tourists in Waikiki. And like, he snorkels for all of this. He's got mountains and mountains of surf fins.
Yeah.
So he mostly makes he glues up fins onto cool pieces of wood and does these kind of like tongue-in-cheek, like poetic pieces,
Yeah.
get people to think about these issues. And he's got a good eye, So, and it's also just comes with the weight of him being like, as just an ocean legend,
Yeah.
that like it really amplifies the work too.
Mm-hmm.
That like he, I don't know how many people that guy's saved, but he's got quite a list. So, and he's kind of, the more I hang out with Mark, you realize he's just basically everybody's hero. Friends from the islands, friends from here, like everybody's got a Mark story, and he's just universally a respected person. You can't really say that about like anybody.
Right. Especially surfers.
Right. Yeah. He's a cool one, man.
Yeah.
And then the same could be said for Steiny, right? That he's a ferocious collector of weird objects, mostly swim fins and surf mats and you name it. He just has that eye, and he just takes funny pictures all around the West Side every day. And like, but he's got poetry in him, and like it comes through in the work, And so showing with those guys was just sick. And they're also old, right? And they're having fun, but also trying to do something positive, and that's like all we can really try to do. So they're kind of like, I think, showing the way. And the gallery then itself, Minnow, is cool. It's just a community space. They're like, no, we're not an art gallery. We're a community art space. When usually art galleries are like the bougiest, like, highbrow, like nose in the air type spaces.
Yeah.
Minnow is just like very, very cool. Very good fit for Santa Cruz. And yeah, I'm stoked on it.
Cool.
Yeah.
And any other artists
Yes.
in the discussion or in your mind who are doing cool stuff with reclaimed?
There's so many. And then when the first person when you asked like who's inspiring me, I wasn't even thinking about artists, that's like visual artists. I was thinking of like the first person that came to mind is Jack Johnson. He is the like, I would say one of the people who's most like of a role model, kind of like I think for a lot of people, but like somebody who's been super successful doing their own authentic creative thing. But then his whole life is just built around then how does he give back? And like, most people when they make it big, that's not really their first thought.
Sure.
But it is his first thought, So their foundation is called the Kokua Hawaii Foundation. They have a 7-acre farm on the North Shore, where it's a teaching farm. So local school kids will do internships there, and it's pretty new, but it's starting to really get going. They have like a local sustainable, like a produce stand, like a refill station at this general store. So you can fill up your shampoo, so you don't have to reuse, or so you don't have to buy a new bottle. So it's, they're doing lots of little things, but all together they're changing that community in a really good way. And then he does that when he goes on tour. I went to his show in Berkeley and hung out, and it was like he brings in all these local nonprofits to talk about what they're doing. at one show he did at the stadium in Honolulu, he had reusable cups for everybody, like 20,000 of them.
Wow,
And
cool.
everybody got to keep their cup, you know? And he just is kind of like always pushing that. That's with his entity called All at Once, which is trying to improve the music industry. Because he's like, whenever I'd play a show, I would, at the end of the show, I'd look out and the whole, you know, arena would just be filled with trash. And so he's like,
Vape carts and stuff,
yeah,
or
yeah,
like
he's like, it's
at
just
a
gnarly.
techno thing. I've seen a photo at like a rave or something, and it was like the aftermath, and it was like the entire ground was covered with just disposable vapes,
Yeah,
which is
gnarly.
like, I mean, God, getting into the rare earth elements
Yeah,
and all
sure.
that
Sure, that's
is just,
gross, right?
yeah, and they got the plastic in there too, so it's like, I think
Checks.
that's bitching that he's doing that.
And that's like, but like it's about what he's doing, but it's also like anybody can live with that mentality of like, this is the zone of influence that I have. Like, it could be like my kids, you know, and like,
Yeah.
but he's got a huge following, right? And
Right.
he's literally changing the industry because he does this thing where they ask, you know, every musician has a rider. Like when you show up, like, you know, we got to have beers in the cooler or something, you know, like,
Right,
like
sure,
these, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
this is how much we get paid, but like, these are my standards. And
Right.
so his standards are like, his rider is like an environmental rider. So
Oh
like,
wow.
we can't have any single-use plastics on site or like, or any, you
Yeah.
know, like, or if you do, we got to like limit it or like, so it's kind of like in a gentle but way of using his success to like make change.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just like you can't do better than that, you know.
Right.
So he's the guy.
And you got
Yeah.
like probably like someone like Drake or something like that. He's like, at every concert, I need a 3-story a wine
Right.
waterfall full of rosé or
Yeah.
Cristal or
ten
whatever it
thousand
is.
gallon hot tub or something. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's cool to see that's inspiring for sure. And then on the artist side, there's a group called Pangea Seed that I like a lot. It's a husband and wife duo. They are gnarly. They just don't sleep, and they set up eco mural takeovers all around the world. So they actually did Santa Cruz with Taylor Reinhold.
Yeah.
They did a Seawalls campaign where they painted all those new murals around town, and they do that all over the world. And so, like honestly, their schedule is just slammed. They're in Mexico, they're in Vietnam, they're doing these things everywhere, bringing massive scale public art to a community for free, basically, and with like real top talent, like muralists, like amazing graffiti and street art, you know, painters.
Yeah.
And they educate the artists too. If they don't know about the issues, they'll have them pick, you know, overfishing, plastic pollution, ocean acidification, all these different issues, and then learn about it and then integrate that into their work. So they're like kind of changing the artist, they're changing the community. It's a cool, powerful platform. So
Yeah.
Pangea Seed is very inspiring.
Cool.
Yeah, they're sick.
Rad. And I think to kind of bookend this all, my last question to you would be, you know, you've got a lot of prominence and exposure from your reclaimed rope art and also others, but we did an article about a large scale art installation you did with the whale, and that seemed to me, you know, I don't know your history or all your passions, but it seemed like that was a little bit out of your comfort zone. Describe that to the listeners, and then also maybe say if there's any other type of, you know, comparable other types of what would you call it, mediums that you would like to use, that you could think it's provocative and, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that. I was hoping we were going to talk about the whale because Chachi came through when we were just like the final moments of this thing, and we were like roasting, blackening all the steel before we and then had to clean it off. So it was like this crazy moment. It was like just like roasting a marshmallow, like just make it all black, you know. Anyway, what we made was like a 12-foot tall stainless steel whale, but it was made from half-inch cable, like stainless steel cable that would be used like, in my mind, it's the same material that you'd use on like a ship, like a crane at the dock, and to lift up a shipping container, which almost everything we use is imported. on these large container ships, and those ships happen to run over whales with pretty like gnarly frequency.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to people like are heavy like on the crab issue, but like ship strikes kill more whales for sure. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
So out of the Port of Long Beach, out of San Francisco Bay, outside, I mean, you've got healthy whale, or like not healthy whale population necessarily, but like a lot of whales maybe at certain times of the year, and giant ships just steamrolling through there. And whales have no idea what ships are. They don't react to a ship coming in. And so they just sit there and get steamrolled. And it can kill them, it can hurt them. And it's a heavy issue. And it doesn't really get the attention that like the crab thing does for some reason. I don't know why. So that was my goal, to try to raise awareness of the issue with this big sculpture. It was also just like I got an opportunity to make a public sculpture for the first time, and that was the story I wanted, and I knew the material would tell the story.
Yeah.
So I try to find things that are like layered like that, where the material is part of the narrative. And that's what happened. I got the gig like over a beer. I was at a fundraiser down in Laguna Beach, and I brought this sculpture down that was like a plastic rope whale. And this dude sitting next to me is like, "Hey, I like that whale tail. Like, can you make me like one that would be metal and last like 100 years?"
Wow.
I'm like, "Sure, dude. Like, yeah. Who are you?"
Yeah.
He turned out his name was Randy Hild, nicest guy ever. He used to run Roxy and Quicksilver.
Okay.
And so he has this afterlife as like a art consultant.
Yeah.
And a new building was going up in Huntington Beach. The law of the land there, which I wish we had in Santa Cruz, if you're building a new structure of certain value, you have to the developer has to pay an artist for a public sculpture.
Oh, wow.
So that's sick, because like then you start getting all this public art that people can enjoy, and the developer has to pay. It's not like it's coming out of local tax revenues. So the guy had to have a sculpture, and the developer had to have a sculpture, and Randy was the art consultant. He's like, "Hey, Ethan, let's make this whale." And I'm like, sick, because usually as an artist you have to apply and compete with a bunch of other artists to get your proposal through. And I've not done a public sculpture, so my resume is not good enough, right? So I just got to the front of the line just over a beer and like super lucky, and then I had to figure out how to do it. It was like 4 years all in, dude. It was like a psycho project. I had to forge every wrap, like, so get the cable red hot, tension it, weld it. There's like 10,000 welds in there.
Wow.
To wrap this 1/2-inch cable around this big tail.
Yeah.
And then had to clean off all the welds to make it look shiny again. It was a nightmare, And I had my daughter at like the beginning of it. It was like the worst timing.
Yeah.
So I was just like juggling house life and this nightmare project. But it came together, and it's bolted to the sidewalk in Huntington right now, about 3 blocks up from the pier.
Yeah.
And hopefully people are getting the message of it. That's the hard thing with art, is like you want it to look pretty, but you also want people to like go deeper. If they just walk by and look at it and say that's cool, that's fine with me. Not everybody's going to get it, but maybe like if one kid or somebody just like goes down the rabbit hole, it's like, whoa, like I get it,
Right,
and then they go do their own research, and that's what it's about, is kind of triggering critical thinking. If it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's like, yes, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
that's what I want it to do. So that piece was a nightmare, but I hope that it is doing something good. And if you're in Huntington Beach, go check it out.
Yeah. Now with that on your resume, maybe it'll be a little bit easier, and you're trying to make a bid for maybe these larger scale. Is that something that was the experience a little traumatizing with just how full in it was, or are you just kind of happy doing what you're doing right now?
I feel that tension. It's a hard one. My family is like, my wife and I are kind of like in that right now, where I'm like, if I get another one of these things, like, it just takes so much bandwidth to do it, and psychologically intense, because you just can't fail with those expensive sculptures. Like just the materials costs and everything. Like I can't screw up.
Right.
I can't afford to screw up. So it's like a lot of people who do public sculptures are these bigger operations. They have big teams and stuff.
The
And I hired
firm
some
or
UCSC
something.
students for a while, but like
Yeah.
I'm not really rigged up to do big public sculptures.
Yeah.
It's very risky. So I'm lucky I pulled it off, but like if I was going to do another one, I'd have to charge more and budget more time
Yeah.
and just approach it more professionally, honestly, because it's real scary working at that scale.
Yeah.
So yeah, I might do it, but my wife probably doesn't want me to. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess, at the end of the day, at least that you are capable of doing something like that. So in the future, if that kind of arises with the right type of funding and,
Could happen.
the
Could
team behind you. But yeah, man, I think it's super awesome what you're doing for not only just locally, but, with your work with Outerknown, and you've done some stuff with WSL. And so, yeah, just bringing all these topics to light is a great thing. And I think, everyone who surfs has to be appreciative of your efforts. So,
I appreciate that. I think that surfing is ultimately where it comes back to, because it's just free. I mean, and we're stuck as surfers. You can't accept the gift and not like we have some responsibility. Like it's cliche. It's said a lot, but surfers have a responsibility to do something or help out. And the hardest thing is figuring out how. I feel lucky that I found my voice in art to be able to do what I like to do and hopefully make some positive change or get people to think. Like I feel relieved that I found a thing, because I feel like a lot of surf people are just like, what do I do? Like, okay, I'll go do a beach cleanup, but like we all know that that's only like ceremonial, really.
right.
So it's hard to know what to do with that responsibility. And I guess the art's role is just to remind people that it's there, that like, yeah, it's people care about this stuff. Maybe you should too. Like, it's a little bit like, some people call it reminder art. And I think that's kind of a funny expression. Like it is ultimately, when I make something for somebody's home, I kind of am stoked, because I'm like subverting, like in a subversive way. Like they have to look at it every day now, and maybe they like to look at it, but maybe it nudges them to be like, dude, like maybe I'll just like, maybe I should walk to the store today or something, like maybe I'll take some action today that's make me feel a little better about it.
And it's also
it's not about guilt, but it's like, it's responsibility is a weird one, right? It is about guilt, like that if we're not pitching in, we're kind of being dead asses, right? So it's like I don't know, I'm still stuck with it, like
well, the art too, you can convey that message and share that message in a way that might be more palatable than somebody listening or getting a flyer, somebody knocking on their door asking for a donation. That could give people time to digest and conceptualize and relate the art towards their life and how they interact with the ocean. So
that's a deep thought, dude. I appreciate that. I think that there is something about the vehicle of delivery of a message, that good art, good writing, good documentaries, like it's not about shame. If you can get people to actually care authentically, or see that it connects to them in a real emotional way, that does it. Because the way that the environmental movement has mostly done it is just making people feel bad for living, and I think if you can make something beautiful and bring joy, then people see potential in things. They see potential in ways, and that's more optimistic, right? And you can work with that versus just feeling beaten down by negative statistics and stuff. So I appreciate that. I need to remember that, because that's the whole point.
Well, that's a hopeful and positive message to kind of wrap this conversation up. And just thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. It's been
so
a pleasure.
Fun talking with you. Killer conversation. Like, it was deep. I appreciate that.
That's where we go. We go to the depths here. And so once again, this was Split Peak Soup Podcast. I'm your host, Neil Carney, aka Neil the Real Deal, aka Neil Dude. And we're part of the Santa Cruz Vibes podcast network. And if you want to find more of my writing, you can go on to www.scvibesmagazine.com. We also release issues 4 times a year. So there's a lot of these subjects do come up in there. And Ethan, is there anywhere that you'd like to direct any potential interested followers?
The art show's still open.
Okay.
It's down at Minnow downtown on Locust Street. Super cool little gallery. Tessa Hope Hasty's having a show there opening in early June.
Okay.
That will be a banger.
Cool.
Maybe this weekend it's still open if you want to look at the work. And my name's Ethan Estess, so you can find me on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, people, it's all you need. We've got the Google. So.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
Stoked, man.
All right. Hey,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ethan.
Super
It's been
stoked.
great to see you. And
Ozzy. Good
we
dog.
got Ozzy in the mix here too, my wingman.
So good.
And signing off here, and we'll check you guys out next time.